Well, let's talk now about New South Wales and hot weather, because it's once again putting staggering demand on the energy grid. Now, the energy market operator, the AEMO, had originally issued a warning for today, but revoked that given temperatures were not quite as hot as predicted. But this is only the start of what's meant to be a hot, dry summer, and there are plenty of hot days ahead. And we know only last week we had the New South Wales Energy Minister telling people to turn up the thermostats on their air conditioners to avoid overloading the system. But this, as we know, is all because of this blind pursuit of renewable energy and the degradation of our coal power assets that has led us to this. And we have all this uranium in Australia, about a third of the world's deposits, and we still refuse to entertain nuclear energy. Well, joining me now is nuclear expert and engineer Dr Adi Paterson. Dr Paterson, welcome to the program. You were the Chief Executive of the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation, which is a government organisation, so you know and are aware of how all this stuff works at the highest level of government. You've written to the Prime Minister urging him to lift the ban on nuclear energy and make it part of our system. Have you received any response?
I have not received a response as yet. Last time I wrote to the Prime Minister, I didn't receive a response. So we are very concerned about the situation in the grid. We know that the wind blows 40% of the time, and so there is no way that you can turn 40% into 100%. The sun goes down at night. The objective of AEMO in their business plan is 100% penetration of intermittent renewables is the short-term strategic goal of the CEO of AEMO. It is not the cost of electricity. It is not the reliability of the grid. It is not how you and I feel about the prices we experience. And so this is an organisation that has bolted itself onto an impossible mission that does not obey the laws of physics and doesn't obey the principles of engineering.
Well, I mean, there's two problems here, right? One is the cost, which you and I pay for when we get our power bills, and if they put up these 10,000 kilometres of power lines that they say they need to make this renewable green dream work, well, again, you and I pay for that eventually. It comes through our bills. Someone has to invest the money up front to build it, but they want to get a return on investment. So that return on investment comes from us. So there's cost is one thing, but as you say, if you're saying we want 100% renewable penetration into the system, where are you going to get 100% renewable energy from without some other kind of backup or some other kind of baseload power sitting there, which at the moment is coal, but they keep driving out of the system?
I think it's almost impossible to imagine the future that they've constructed. I worked on batteries in the 1990s, sold patents for batteries, lithium batteries, to Japan. So with my battery background, I am at a loss to understand how we will get more than minutes to hours ever out of batteries in future. That seems to be part of the narrative at the moment. It's simply impossible. So we're sitting with a situation where instead of finding a way to deal with the reliability challenge, we're going to build a big new grid. Now, the Eastern grid in Australia is already the most complex machine in the Southern Hemisphere. It's got about 10,000 kilometres of grid. We are going to double its size, but reduce the number of electrons that each pole and wire carries. This is a recipe for disaster. And I don't want to oversimplify it, but it is that simple. Last Thursday, we saw people in regional and rural New South Wales, before they built that grid, having blackouts on a random basis because of the temperature and because of the instability of the grid. But it's worse than that, because the quality of electrons, that 50 hertz signal, when it becomes distorted by too much wind and solar, it damages precision equipment. You cannot manufacture, for instance, in South Australia, jobs have been lost because precision manufacturing, in the place we were intending to build our submarines, cannot be maintained with the quality of electrons in South Australia. We've got more than just a short-term problem. We've got a systemic planning problem and a structure that reinforces the egos of people who have a goal to do something with renewables, as opposed to a goal of providing clean, reliable, always-on, low-cost electrons to the people of Australia. I would love to see AEMO with a goal that talks about consumers of electricity and talks about quality of service.
Got to imagine thinking about the consumer instead of whatever commercial objective you've got in front of you. And this is obviously where nuclear comes into it, right? We've had this moratorium since the 90s because the federal government consolidated all the laws from around the states. Victoria had a ban. Part of the agreement was that the ban went national. I have said ad nauseum here on Sky and elsewhere in the newspapers that if the federal government truly believes that nuclear energy is not economically viable, then they have nothing to lose in lifting the moratorium, because no one will build it. But I suspect what they're actually worried about is that it will be economically viable, someone will invest in it, they will build it, and this great renewable dream of theirs will have a whole shot in it. And the years, the decades of money and policy that have been expended on this will look silly.